Hello, fight fans, and welcome to another edition of Monday Night Fight Talk. As always, I am your host, Dylan Brewski, and I am so excited to be with you on this beautiful day. It looks like we're going to have a beautiful week here in the Pacific Northwest. I hope it will be just as beautiful wherever you live. But I do have to make a confession. I did say last week that I would be doing my reaction to Bellator 284. I watched Bellator 284. There wasn't a whole lot of big fights on that card. So, especially the main event. Like, the main event was more for history rather than, like, for the belt, for contention with the belt or anything like that. So, and the co-main event was probably the biggest fight in terms of someone maybe fighting for the belt, where the number one seeded heavyweight and the number 5 seeded heavyweight fought, but the fight ended very early due to no contest due to an eye poke. So there's really not much to go over with Bellator, so I did leave that out for this week. So if you were looking forward to that, I apologize. Feel free to ask me any questions if you do want to hear any of my input from Bellator 284. I'd be happy to give it to you. But we do have some PFL reaction and predictions. We do have some UFC reaction and predictions, so stay tuned for that. It should be a very exciting, could go fairly long. I will forewarn you, this could be quite a long show, but that will make up for the fact that probably the next 2 weeks after this will probably be a bit shorter shows. So we're going to make up a little bit with a bit of a longer show today. But let's start off with PFL, my reactions. Those took place Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, depending on where you live. For me, I was up at 8:30 on a Saturday, which, I mean, I'm up anyways at 8:30 on a Saturday, so it wasn't that bad. But I was up watching fights all day long because right after that, we went straight into the UFC Fight Night. But nonetheless, PFL starting off in the heavyweight division. Matisse Scheffel taking on Juan Adams. Battle between two replacement fighters, actually. With Matisse Scheffel, we knew was going to be a replacement for the reigning champ, Bruno Cappellosa. Bruno Cappellosa did sustain an injury in the second fight where he did fight Matisse Scheffel. That Matisse Scheffel did win that fight. So we knew Scheffel was going to be in there, but earlier this week we found out that the number 1 seeded Denis Goltsov had visa issues and he was unable to make it to Wales where this event took place, and unfortunately had to pull out of the competition, which is very sad because he was on a tear. He was very dominant in the 2 fights that we saw him this year. I was really looking forward to him going in the cage again and maybe getting a chance at the $1 million. But nonetheless, Juan Adams graciously stepped up on very, very short notice. And in the beginning, this was a very entertaining fight. It was sort of close in the beginning. Juan Adams was having great success on the takedowns. He landed 4 of 6 takedowns and was finding a lot more success with the kicks than Matisse Scheffel was. But you could tell Juan took this fight on very short notice. He gassed out fairly quickly. He had a good first round, like I said, but then the second round, around halfway through the second round, you can tell he was fading very, very fast, and Matisse Scheffel took full advantage of that, was throwing huge strikes. Eventually, in the third round, he was able to secure the TKO victory after Juan Adams was basically just standing there waiting almost for the referee to stop the fight. So Matisse Scheffel will move on to the PFL finals as a replacement, so that's very cool for him to be able to move on as a replacement. He will be taking on the winner of this next fight, Ante De La Hoya, the protege, you could say, of the legend in MMA, Mirko Cro Cop, taking on the Brazilian Renan Ferreira. This one did not last anywhere near as long as the third round. This was actually a fairly quick fight. As De La Hoya was able to score a fairly early takedown and then landed some just bombs down on Renan Ferreira. He was able to get the first round TKO victory. I wish there was more to say about this fight, but De La Hoya was absolutely dominant. He is back in the finals. I believe he was in the finals. He was the runner-up back in 2019, I believe. That's when he made it to the finals. So this will set up in the heavyweight finals. We have Matisse Scheffel taking on Ante De La Hoya for the battle of heavyweight supremacy and $1 million. And then we go to the welterweight division, starting off with the 2 versus 3 matchup. Sadabo C taking on Carlos Leal. This was definitely the closest of all the semifinal fights that we saw on Friday. This was an incredibly close fight. Neither guy was able to land a takedown. Total strikes landed was separated by 5. Leal was able to land double the kicks that Sabado C was able to land, but Sabado C outstruck him with his hands by 10. So there was about a 5-strike difference, like I said. So very, very close fight. I think the judges saw it as Sadabo C was landing the more significant strikes. He was landing the more powerful strikes, and that's what got him the decision victory, because at the end of the day, Carlos Leal was a bit more active, but he also missed quite a bit more than Sadabo C did also. So I could have seen that fight go either way, but I do agree. I did see it as a Sadabo C win, and he will be moving on to the finals in the welterweight division. And then maybe the upset of the season. Number 1 seeded Rory McDonald taking on Delano Taylor, who, like Juan Adams, took this fight on like under a week's notice, or right around a week's notice. Like Denis Goltsov, number 4 seeded Magomed Umalatov also had visa issues. He was unable to travel to Wales. We had to get a replacement for him. Delano Taylor also graciously was able to step up in this fight. But Delano Taylor looked fantastic in this fight. Stuffing the takedown that Rory McDonald attempted. He was only able to attempt one because this fight wasn't very long. And landed a takedown of his own. The fight didn't last very long, as I said, as Taylor was able to land a huge strike and then just pounce on Rory McDonald and get the TKO victory over the number 1 seeded, the UFC veteran, the former Bellator champion. Rory McDonald was the favorite, in my opinion, to win this welterweight championship this year. And Delano Taylor looked absolutely fantastic. Afterwards, Rory McDonald's wife, and now it has been confirmed by him, he is retiring from MMA. So I do want to take a second to congratulate him on his career. I mean, he was a huge part, and I mean, you could call some sort of Canadian revolution in the UFC. There was a point where Georges St. Pierre was one of the best fighters on the planet. You had other guys from Eastern Canada coming in and dominating and doing really well in the UFC. Rory McDonald was right in the middle of that. Like I said, he was a former Bellator champion. He didn't have as much success in PFL, but he did find some success. Like I said, he was the number 1 seed this year. He had 2 wins this year. So congratulations on a great career, Rory McDonald. Can't wait to see what you do next. But before that, congratulations on your career. But nonetheless, we do have a finals matchup in the welterweight division. That will be Delano Taylor taking on Sadabo C in the finals for $1 million. So that will be a very entertaining fight, I think. But now let's get into some predictions for PFL. Starting off in the women's lightweight division, number 1 seed Larissa Pacio taking on 4 seed Olena Koleshnik. Pacio has been absolutely dominant in her first 2 fights. She's got 2 first-round TKO victories. She has been hit in both fights combined 3 times. So that's what we're talking about that's pure domination on the side of Larissa Pacio. So she has looked fantastic so far in her 2 fights. The 4-seed Olena Koleshnik, who, while hasn't been as dominant, has been just as effective. She's got 2 wins also. Those are by decision, but still, that's 2 victories nonetheless. In her first fight, she got a very close victory over Abigail Montes, but then in her second fight against Vanessa Melo, she got a much more convincing decision victory. So she is riding high also. This will be the best opponent Pacio has faced this year, but she has faced very good fighters in the past. I believe she was also a runner-up for one of the PFL championships. I believe back in 2019 also she was the runner-up in this division. But how dominant Larissa Pacio has been, I would be crazy not to pick her right now. So I'm going Larissa Pacio to move on to the finals. And now we have the undefeated 2-time defending champ, Kayla Harrison, the number 2 seed, taking on Martina Jindrova, who is the 3 seed, obviously. Kayla Harrison is coming in. She actually had a decision victory, which I didn't know any Kayla Harrison fight went to decision in her first fight, but it was a very dominant decision victory. It wasn't very close. But then in her second fight, she made very quick work of Caitlin Young with first-round TKO victory and only taking 1 strike in the process. So she had a very dominant second fight, riding high. Martina Jindrova has also looked very good this season, though. In her first bout, she had a very dominant decision victory over Vanessa Melo, nearly tripling the strikes that Vanessa Melo landed, and just dominated the whole fight. And then, like Kayla Harrison, made very quick work of her second opponent, getting a TKO victory where she also only took 4 strikes. So both of these fighters are coming in very fresh, off of very short victories, and where they didn't take a whole lot of damage, or really any damage at all. I think this is going to be a fairly good fight, but kind of like Larissa Pacio, I'm not picking against Kayla Harrison. Are you kidding me? Kayla Harrison's an absolute freak. There's no way I'm picking against Kayla Harrison. I'm going Kayla Harrison versus Larissa Pacio in the finals of the women's lightweight division. Now we move on to the featherweight division. In the 1-4 matchup, Chris Wade taking on Brendan Loughnane. Chris Wade has looked absolutely fantastic in his 2 fights this year, getting a decision victory over the 2-time champ Lance Palmer, and then made very quick work of Kyle Bochniak, getting a first-round TKO victory, securing that number 1 seed for himself, where Loughnane, who will have a home field advantage, basically, they're fighting in London, he's from Manchester, so they're in his home country, so that could be on his side. That could be what sways this fight. You never know with situations like that. But he did have a very close victory in his first fight against Ryoji Kudo, who I will be talking about in a second, where it was a technical decision as they banged heads. I've talked about this before, but they banged heads, clash of heads, total accident. But Ryoji Kudo had a huge gash on his forehead. He was unable to continue, and Brendan Loughnane did win a technical decision in that fight. But then the second matchup, he had a much more convincing victory, just getting the fight where he wanted the fight to go, getting multiple takedowns. I believe it was about 4 takedowns he got in that fight, and he easily won that bout to secure the 4 seed. But I honestly don't think Loughnane will be active enough to beat Chris Wade. I think Chris Wade is far more active. He's taken on grapplers before. I think he's actually a pretty decent grappler himself. So I'm not worried about the wrestling of Brandon Loughnane. I'm going with Chris Wade to move on to the finals in this one, and that leads to our 2 versus 3. Ryoji Kudo, who I was just talking about, taking on the American Bubba Jenkins. As I said, Kudo did lose his first fight to Brendan Loughnane with that technical decision, but came back in a huge way with a first-round KO victory over Alejandro Flores to secure the number 2 seed. And then Bubba Jenkins has had 2 absolutely dominant decision victories in his 2 fights, using his D1 wrestling background, just getting takedown after takedown. I believe it's 5-4 in the 2 fights he's had this year, getting them to the ground and pound the whole time. He dominated both of those fights. I do think the wrestling is going to be too much for Ryoji Kudo. I'm going Bubba Jenkins to move on in sort of an upset as the 2 versus 3 seed. So I have Chris Wade taking on Bubba Jenkins in the featherweight matchup, and then just a reminder, Larissa Pacio and Kayla Harrison in the women's lightweight division finals. But that's all I got for PFL, so let's move on to the UFC. We had a very, very fun fight night, headlined by Dominic Cruz and Marlon Chito Vera. So I'll be getting to that fight in a little bit. Starting off with the first fight of the night, Youssef Zalal taking on Damon Blackshear. Grapplers matchup starting off the day. The first round started off very slow. Takedown by Zalal was reversed by Blackshear, who did a majority of the damage. I mean, the strikes were 12-9 in that round, so not a whole lot of damage was going on in that first round. Second round was a little closer, but still not very active. Blackshear getting a takedown. Each guy attempted a submission. Each guy got a reversal, but still not a whole lot of action beyond that. Third round, though, Youssef Zalal went absolutely berserk. He defended all 3 takedowns that Blackshear attempted and landed almost 60 significant strikes in this round compared to Damon Blackshear's 19. I believe Zalal had 22 total strikes in this fight, and 59 of them were in the third round. I don't know what happened, but some switch turned on in that third round where he decided to go off and actually start fighting. 2 judges actually gave Zalal the 10-8 in that third round, so there was a draw for 2 of the judges, but one judge only did give it a 29-28, so a 10-9 round in that third. So Damon Blackshear, making his UFC debut on short notice, gets the majority decision victory. So congratulations to him. That was a very fun fight to start off the day. Next up, Jason Witt versus Josh Quinlan. I actually didn't talk about this fight because I wasn't exactly sure if it was going to happen. When I was doing this show last week, it was not confirmed whether these two would be fighting on this card. Considering they were supposed to fight on last week's card, Josh Quinlan tested positive for a trace of an illegal substance, later deemed not important enough to suspend or anything like that. He fully admitted wrongdoing in the past. This was very much in the past. He is not on it anymore. So they allowed them to fight this weekend. We had a catchweight bout here. I believe it was 180 because it was either 175 or 180. They're usually welterweights. I can't remember exactly the weight that they decided to go with. Witt looked decent in the beginning, getting a takedown, but not able to do much more with it. Once the fight got back on the feet, though, Witt attempted a kick, and then he went to sleep because Josh Quinlan landed a monster left hook and completely knocked Jason Witt out cold. Also showed great sportsmanship as he was about to come down with a huge strike, but realized Jason Witt is sleeping, and the ref was coming in anyways and held back, didn't throw the next punch. So great sportsmanship by Josh Quinlan, but nonetheless, that was a monster left hook and a big win. And I believe that was Josh Quinlan's UFC debut, so congratulations to him. Now we go to the flyweight division. Ode Osborne taking on Tyson Nam. A very fun strikers duel. Tyson Nam coming off of a long layoff, which, like I said last week, usually long layoffs worry me. They worry me a lot. But Nam is such a veteran. He's been in the fight game for a long time. He's fought a lot of fights. Plus, he had the 2 fight camps getting prepared for Tajiri Ulanbekov, where Ulanbekov ended up having to pull out of both of those. So at the end of the day, that layoff didn't worry me entirely as much as they usually do. I did still pick Ode Osborne, and it looked like a very even matchup in the beginning until Ode Osborne attempted a flying knee and completely dropped his hands. Tyson Nam saw it coming from a mile away as Ode Osborne did the same thing earlier in the fight. Nam telegraphed it perfectly, landed a huge left hook while Osborne was on his way down, and then landed a few more big strikes as he did rock Ode Osborne, but he didn't completely knock him out. Jumped on him, landed a few more big strikes. Referee steps in. Tyson Nam gets a good victory after his long layoff. So congratulations to him. Next up, Gabriel Benitez taking on Charlie Ontiveros. A big fight for both of these lightweights, trying to end their losing streaks. This one was a lot more hectic, with both guys throwing a lot of strikes in the 3.5 minutes that this fight was. Benitez was able to get a takedown, but didn't control him for very long. Ontiveros was able to get back up fairly quickly. But Benitez just kept on Ontiveros, eventually landing some big strikes to where the referee did stop the fight, getting Gabriel Benitez the TKO victory. Next up, Cynthia Calvillo taking on Nina Nunes. First off, got to congratulate Nina Nunes on her retirement. She didn't have the most glorious career ever, but she was a good fighter nonetheless. But she wants to have more babies. Can't fault her for that. So congratulations on the retirement, and not only the retirement, going out on top over another ranked opponent in a division that you've never fought in before. This was a very, very close fight. Honestly, the decision was sort of controversial. Calvillo outstruck Nunes, landed 3 takedowns to Nunes 0 takedowns. I personally thought Calvillo got the win, but Nunes did seem to hit her harder, more. So her strikes were a bit more significant in my eyes. I could see how they gave it to Nunes. Nonetheless, congratulations, Nina Nunes, on retirement. I hope you enjoy the rest of your life. I'm sure we'll see more of you, with Amanda still being the queen of the women's everything. Now we go all the way up to the heavyweights. Martin Buday taking on Lucas Dreski. I don't know why it's Dreski. That's a B. Whatever. Another pretty controversial decision, giving Buday a split decision victory in this bout. Dreski almost doubled the amount of strikes landed at a higher rate. I don't really like giving Martin Buday this fight. The only thing Buday did better was kind of control the octagon, and that should be way lower on the list. Dreski outstruck Buday in every round by at least 12. And in the first 2 rounds, it was over 20 that he outstruck Buday. I gave this fight to Lucas Dreski very easily. I could have seen it go 30-27 for Lucas Dreski. Nonetheless, I'm not a judge. This is why you don't leave it in the judge's hands. So, yeah, I don't know. Now for the premier prelim, Angela Hill taking on Lupe Godinez. Another catchweight bout, but this was because Hill took this fight on fairly short notice. but she would have fooled me. If I didn't know that she took this fight on short notice, I would have assumed Godinez took this fight on short notice. Besides the first round, Godinez came out, had a very, very good first round, nearly doubling the amount of strikes landed and defending 2 takedowns from Hill. But after that, it kind of went downhill because that's the only round she won. As Hill outstruck Godinez in the last 2 rounds, she was able to even land a takedown in the last 2 rounds. And she did enough for the decision victory to get Angela Hill back on the winning side of things, which is very big for her. She was on a bit of a losing streak there for a while. So congratulations to Angela Hill. Now for the first main card fight, Bruno Silva versus Gerald Meerschaert. This was a weird fight. Bruno Silva did not look like himself at all. He looked gassed incredibly quick. It sort of surprised me because I know the fights were in San Diego. I'm assuming this is what happened. The fights were in San Diego. DC, Michael Bisping, Brandon Fitzgerald were all talking about how it was a lot more humid in that arena than what they're used to and around the country. But Bruno Silva's from Brazil, so I didn't think humidity and heat would be a big factor for him, but I don't know if that is what was the factor or if something happened, if he had an injury and he wasn't able to fight fully, if he had an illness and wasn't able to. I don't know what was happening, but Gerald Meerschaert took full advantage of that and pretty much dominated this whole fight. The third round hit, Silva was all but done when the round started. But Meerschaert landed a huge left hook, knocked Silva to the ground. And Meerschaert, we know, is a jiu-jitsu guy. He is not a striker. And he did the smart thing, and instead of gassing himself out trying to land big strikes on the ground, he attacked the neck, got the guillotine choke in, and was able to get the third round submission victory. So, great win for Gerald Meerschaert to get back on the winning side of things. Now for Priscilla Cachoeira taking on Ariane Lipski, another fight that was supposed to take place last week that got moved up to this week. Lipski did have an illness day of, so they decided to move the fight up to bantamweight. It was originally at flyweight, and have these two go at it a week later. Priscilla Cachoeira has become one of my favorite fighters in the UFC. She is so awesome to watch. She's an absolute beast. She has freaking stone for hands. She showed it all in this fight. 20 strikes in 65 seconds, getting a TKO victory. In 65 seconds. You do not see a lot of women getting 65-second TKO victories. Priscilla Cachoeira did that. Very good showing for her. Congratulations to her. Now we have Devin Clark taking on Asmat Murzakanov. This wasn't the closest fight, but it was a fairly entertaining fight with both guys throwing very big strikes. The biggest problem was Devin Clark wasn't landing a whole lot of them. Murzakanov was landing at an incredibly high rate, landing 3 out of every 4 strikes that he threw at a 75% clip. You don't see a lot of third round victories with a 75% landing percentage. He was doing a good job of mixing it up with body strikes too. The body strikes were the end too. I mean, he landed an absolutely brutal body shot. When I watched that shot in slow motion, my ribs hurt. My sternum hurt. That's how hard he punched him in the ribs. It would not surprise me at all if Devin Clark's ribs are broken or something's messed up in his abdomen area, because that was an absolutely brutal strike. Got Murzakanov the TKO victory. So congratulations to him, keeping his undefeated record to go along with it. Now the battle of the Yasmins. Yasmin Haragui taking on Yasmin Lucindo. Absolutely great fight. Both fighters making their UFC debut. Both very young at 20 and 23 years old. These two ladies left it all out there and just threw caution to the wind. This was my favorite fight of the night. I know fight of the night went to the co-main event, which I'll get to in a second. This was my fight of the night. This fight was so freaking awesome to watch. Unbelievable performance by both ladies. Lucindo took this fight on short notice, too. Her debut, 20 years old, and she had that performance in a loss, too. Harugui was just the better fighter on this day, though. She outlanded Lucindo in almost every aspect. It's no disrespect to Lucindo. She's still very young. She's got a bright career ahead of her. Yasmin was just able to get the job done a little bit better in this fight and keep her undefeated record also. So congratulations to both of these ladies. Very good showing for the both of them. Now for the co-main event. Nate Landwehr taking on David Onama. It received Fight of the Night, like I said. A lot of people are saying it's in contention for Fight of the Year. I respectfully disagree with that. I may be a hater for this, but it just really wasn't for me. Don't get me wrong. Very, very entertaining. It was a fun fight to watch, but a few things made it not as great as other fights for me. First off, the first two rounds were incredibly one-sided on each side. David Onama had a incredible first round. He completely dominated the first round, nearly doubling the strikes that Landwehr landed, and landed a takedown and got a knockdown. Second round, Landwehr came back and destroyed Onama. Onama was completely gassed in the second round. Outstruck him 65-9. 3 takedowns, 2 submission attempts, complete domination in the second round. Now for the third round, that really made this fight not that great for me. I have no idea why Landwehr would not just finish that fight. It almost made me mad that he wouldn't just finish the fight. He would knock Onama down. Onama would basically give up, and Landwehr would just stand back up and want him to stand up with him again. Finish the fight. It was very annoying to me. He was trying to play with the crowd. He was trying to do this Nathan Diaz type thing. But, dude, you are not Nathan Diaz. You are nowhere near Nathan Diaz status. You don't get to do stuff like that. Finish the fight. That's what fans are there to see. They are there to see finishes. And when you're doing that and standing back up, I get it, the crowd on this particular night was very excited. They were all cheering, but it wasn't for me, to be honest. I thought it was a great fight. I don't think it's anywhere near contention for Fight of the Year, in my opinion. I don't even think it was the best fight of the night. It almost backfired for Landwehr. One of the judges actually gave Onama the third round. That almost really backfired for Landwehr. Luckily for him, 2 of the judges did see that third round for him, and he was able to get the majority decision. Nonetheless, it was a good fight and good win for Nate Landwehr. But I think we need to tone it down a little bit on the hype behind that fight. And now for the main event. Marlon Cheeto Vera taking on the legend, the greatest bantamweight ever, Dominic Cruz. This fight was very fun to watch with the two contrasting styles. Dominic Cruz came out in those first 2 rounds and looked insanely good. Aside from getting knocked down in the first, he easily took both of the first 2 rounds. Even with the knockdown, he took the first 2 rounds very, very easily. Round 3 came, and you could tell Cheeto was starting to open up a little bit. He closed the distance on the strikes because he was getting outstruck by a lot. He defended all 3 takedowns Cruz attempted. I could see that round going either way. I still had it for Cruz, though. So, 4th round, going into the 4th round, I had Marlon Cheeto Vera down 3 rounds to 0. 4th round, Vera opened up completely. His power was getting to Cruz, and Cruz was not landing well at all. I believe he was landing at like a 35% clip. And for Dominic Cruz, that's very low. Dominic Cruz usually lands at a very high clip. Then Vera saw an opening earlier in the fight where every time Cruz scrambles to get out of the way, he drops his hands and he drops his head. And Cheeto took full advantage of that, landed the high left kick, knocked Dominic Cruz out like I have never seen Dominic Cruz knocked out before. I know he got finished by Henry Cejudo. That was not the same as this knockout. This was a knockout. The Henry Cejudo was a TKO where he got grounded and pounded, was just kind of covering up. Good stoppage. He did get finished, but that was not this. Great, huge win for Marlon Cheeto Vera. He is a serious contender in this bantamweight division, but I worry where he goes after this. This doesn't give him a title shot, especially if Jose Aldo wins next weekend. If Jose Aldo wins next weekend, Jose Aldo has beat Cheeto Vera before. So you can't give that shot to Cheeto Vera. Jose Aldo has that win. And Dvalishvili, I don't know if you give him that shot if he beats Jose Aldo. So it's a very tough place to be for Cheeto Vera, but I do look forward to see where he goes in the future. He's one of my favorite fighters in the UFC, so I'm very excited to see where he can take his career. But that's all I have for reactions. Let's get into some predictions for UFC 278, headlined by the pound-for-pound king, Kamaru Usman, taking on Leon Rocky Edwards. Very excited for this pay-per-view, so let's get right into it. First fight of the night, a grapplers matchup in the flyweight division. Daniel Da Silva taking on Victor Altamirano. Both guys are coming off of losses, and Da Silva is actually replacing Jake Hadley, who sustained an injury and cannot compete. So this is kind of a short notice fight. I do believe that this fight has been in the works for a while, though, so it's not necessarily a very short notice fight where Da Silva hasn't had much of any camp at all. Da Silva has never had a fight go to the judges and will look to continue that. Plus, the two losses he's coming off of are against very tough opponents. We're talking about Jeff Molina and Francisco Figueiredo, two very tough flyweights. So, yeah, it's two losses, but it's not two of the worst losses that you can have on your resume. Altamirano does have very good takedown defense, though, and the fact that he won't be taking this fight on short notice, he will have a full fight camp. I am going to go with Victor Altamirano in this fight by decision to start off the night. Next up, in the bantamweight division, Aurikaling taking on Jay Perrin. The veteran Aurikaling looking to stay on the winning side. Jay Perrin is looking to get back on the winning side and win his first UFC bout at all. So this is a very big fight for Jay Perrin. Both guys, again, are grapplers, with Aurikaling being more of a wrestler, Jay Perrin being more of a submission-oriented fighter. I think this will be a fun matchup, but I think with Aurikaling's lack of finishing ability, he has a lot of fights that go to decision. I'm going with Jay Perrin in this fight with a third-round submission victory. Next up, back down to the flyweights, the number 11 ranked Amir Albazi taking on Francisco Figueiredo. Big stakes for at least one of these guys. Amir Albazi has been out of commission for a while now. He has not fought in over a year and a half. With him pulling out of one fight last year, I believe around July, and then Tim Elliott pulling out of a fight earlier this year in June for him. So he has had to deal with that year and a half long layoff. Francisco Figueiredo, the younger brother of the champ Davidson Figueiredo, looking to get into the rankings by beating the number 11 ranked guy. After making very quick work of Daniel Da Silva earlier this year. Again, another fight of both guys are great grapplers, and both guys are pretty good against the takedown too. This is going to be a very interesting fight, but I'm going with the guy that has stayed more active, the guy that has a lot at stake in this fight, and he's got some pretty terrific training partners, if I don't say so myself. I'm going Figueiredo in a finish, second round submission. Now we go up to the welterweight division. AJ Fletcher taking on Enhei Lusa. AJ Fletcher looks to avenge his one and only loss in his career in his UFC debut against Matthew Semmelsberger earlier this year. AJ Fletcher is a very, very good grappler. Can use submissions, has terrific ground and pound. He can beat you anywhere on the ground. Enhei Lusa has a decent ground game, but is much more of a stand-up fighter, but has terrific takedown defense. He is also coming off of a loss in his UFC debut, so both guys will be looking for that first UFC win. I think this fight will come down to whether Fletcher will be able to get Lusa to the ground, which I do think he does. I'm going AJ Fletcher by decision in this matchup. Now we have a matchup in the women's flyweight division. Miranda Maverick taking on Shanna Young. Good matchup between two flyweights looking to stay on the winning side of things, with both ladies picking up wins earlier this year, each snapping a 2-fight win streak for themselves. Both are definitely grappling specialists, but I would say Miranda Maverick is the better grappler in my eyes. Has faced tougher competition. The two losses that she has are to two of the best prospects in all of women's MMA. That's Macy Barber and Erin Blanchfield. That's not two bad losses right there. I got to go with Miranda Maverick in this fight by decision. Just pure, she's a better grappler and she's faced tougher competition. I'm going Miranda Maverick. Now we go with two Contender Series veterans, Sean Woodson taking on Luis Saldana. Both have been fairly successful since the Contender Series. Woodson winning 3 of his first 4 bouts, with his only loss coming to the veteran Julian Erosa with a Darce choke. So, I mean, I'm not going to hold that loss too much against him. Plus Saldana with a decision loss to Austin Lingo almost a year ago from Saturday. That was on August 21st, 2021. This one obviously taking place on August 20th. Both guys are fairly well-rounded fighters, with Woodson definitely having better stand-up and Saldana having the better ground game. This is a very tough fight to call, but I am going to go with Sean Woodson to be able to keep the fight on the feet a little bit more. I'm going Sean Woodson by second round TKO in this matchup. Now we have Wu Yanan taking on Lucy Pudlova. A big fight in the women's bantamweight division. Wu Yanan may be fighting to stay in the UFC. She has lost 4 of her last 5 fights, including her last 3. Taking on Pudlova, who will be making her second debut in her second, because this will be her second stint in the UFC, after she had lost 4 straight from 2018 to 2020. Since then, though, she's been on quite a bit of a roll. She's won 5 of 6 fights. So, and only being 28, I think the UFC saw giving her a second chance wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Both fighters are primarily stand-up strikers, so I see it staying up on the feet for the most part. While I think both fighters are very motivated, I do think Pudlova has a little bit more positive motivation, trying to make a statement in her return to the UFC. I'm going Pudlova by decision in this matchup. And now for the premier prelim, Leonardo Santos taking on Jared Gordon. 2 well-rounded veterans going head-to-head in the lightweight division. Leonardo Santos is a very good jiu-jitsu artist with sneaky good hands too. Is coming off 2 straight losses, but before that he was on a tear, going unbeaten in 8 fights, all in the UFC too. So he was on a tear going through the UFC. before he ran into his last two opponents. Jared Gordon, the wrestler, has had an up and down career, going 6-4, but was on a 3-fight win streak before losing to Grant Dawson earlier this year. The big difference in this fight, Santos has very good takedown defense. Gordon has okay takedown defense. With that factor, I'm going Santos, getting the more dominant positions and sinking in a submission in the second round for the victory. Now we go to the main card, not main event, main card. Tyson Pedro taking on Harry Hunsucker. Tyson Pedro coming off of a very dominant victory earlier this year versus Ike Villanueva after a 3+ year layoff, taking on Harry Hunsucker, who will be looking for that first UFC win, dropping down to light heavyweight as his first two bouts did take place at heavyweight, and against pretty tough competition. One of those fights is against Tai Tuivasa, who is now a top 5 heavyweight. So Pedro has been a great jiu-jitsu fighter for a majority of his career. He has a lot of wins by submission, but he didn't even need to use that in his last fight. I think his striking has improved a lot since with that long layoff. Hunsucker, very good grappler, so I expect him to try and overpower Pedro. I don't think he's going to be able to, though. I think this weight cut's going to weigh a lot on him. I think he's going to be a little bit more drained for this fight. I'm going Tyson Pedro pretty quick. First round TKO victory for Tyson Pedro. Now we go up to the heavyweight division. A huge matchup. This is all pun intended because both of these guys are big boys. Marcin Tybura taking on Alexander Romanov. Two ranked guys going head-to-head. The wrestler, Tybura, looking to get back on the right track after his decision loss to Alexander Volkov late last year. He'll be taking on the undefeated, the well-rounded, the powerful, the scary, quite frankly, Alexander Romanov, winning his first 5 fights in the UFC. This guy can really do it all. Wrestle, strike, submissions, it doesn't matter. He can do, really, like I said, it all. He is an absolutely terrifying human being. He is a bit more comfortable on the ground, has great submissions, like I said. I think Romanov wins this fight fairly quickly. I'm going a TKO victory, though. I think he gets him on the ground and starts the ground and pound and gets the TKO victory, continuing his undefeated record, improving to 17-0, and to continue to climb the heavyweight rankings. Now, one of my favorite fights of the night, Jose Aldo, the legend himself, coming in, trying to get another shot at the bantamweight title by beating the champion's friend, Merab Dvalishvili. Jose Aldo is coming in, winning his last 3 fights over very tough competition, and will be looking to continue that hot streak. Dvalishvili, who is coming in even hotter, though. He has won his last 7 UFC bouts, hasn't lost since 2018, is one of the most talented wrestlers in the bantamweight division, if not the most talented wrestler in the bantamweight division. He's certainly not the most exciting fighter to watch, but he is as effective as he is boring in some people's eyes. This guy is a dominant wrestler, but taking down Jose Aldo is no easy task. A career 90% takedown defense. That's what we're going with right here. This is going to be a very tough fight to call. Jose Aldo has faced some of the best, if not the best, 2 separate divisions have ever seen. We're talking Max Holloway. We're talking Alexander Volkanovski. We're talking Frankie Edgar. We're talking Conor McGregor. We're talking Petr Yan. This guy has truly faced the best of the best. I'm going with the veteran in this fight. I think Jose Aldo is on a mission to get that second title shot, and I think he gets it after this fight, after beating Merab Dvalishvili by decision. Big fight, though. I could see it going either way. Now for the co-main, not going to lie, I expected Aldo and Dvalishvili to be the co-main over this fight. I think that fight has a lot bigger stakes in terms of championships, anything like that. But nonetheless, I do think this will be an exciting fight. Paulo Costa, the former title contender, taking on the former champion, Luke Rockhold, who has been out of commission for quite a while. I do think, like I said, this is going to be a very fun fight. Paulo Costa was on a tear through the UFC before running into the champ Israel Adesanya, where he lost that fight and then has lost another fight to Marvin Vettori right after that. So he is coming in off of a 2-fight losing streak, but still is very dangerous. He's incredibly powerful. Plus, Luke Rockhold has been out of the game since 2019 with a very bad back injury. So it'll be interesting to see how he comes back. I think he's looking to make a statement by beating the number 6 guy in this division, showing everybody he's still got it. I don't know if he's still got it, though, so we'll have to wait and see. Ultimately, I think Costa's resume is he's beaten great fighters in the past. We know what he can do against very good fighters. I'm going with Paulo Costa just because he's been more active recently. He didn't have a 3-year layoff and have a very bad back injury. So I'm going Paulo Costa with a second-round TKO in this fight. And that brings us to the main event of the evening. The pound-for-pound king, the Nigerian nightmare, Kamaru Usman, taking on Leon Rocky Edwards. We all know these two have fought in the past. Usman won that fight by decision. Since then, Leon Edwards has not lost. 9 wins. 1 no contest against Belal Muhammad that ended due to an eye poke. Both guys are completely different fighters since the first time they fought. Usman's striking is much improved. He is at least twice the striker he was the first time that he faced Leon Edwards. He was mostly a wrestler back then. Leon Edwards' grappling has improved tremendously. He was mostly a kickboxer back then. He didn't even have very good takedown defense back then. Now he does. He can take people down now. So the odds have evened up a lot. I think it's gonna be interesting to see who improved on their weaknesses, so-called weaknesses, from their last fight. For now, though, it's kind of like the Kayla Harrison thing. I'm not picking against Kamaru Usman. Are you kidding me? He's the pound-for-pound king for a reason. There's a reason that he has that title. I'm going with Kamaru Usman. He's the number 1 fighter for a reason. Kamaru Usman by decision to retain his belt. That's all I have for this week. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Next week will be actually an all-reaction show. With this Saturday, it's the last of the PFL semifinal bouts. So we're not going to have anything PFL the week after. We have no UFC event on the 27th. So I'll be reacting to the featherweight and women's lightweight finals of PFL and also reacting to UFC 278. But until then, thank you all again so much for listening. This was a very fun show. I do believe it didn't run too much longer than my usual shows, so I didn't hold you for too long, I hope. But until then, you can find me on social media, on Instagram at Monday Night Fight Talk, on Twitter at MN Fight Talk. You can feel free to DM me, comment on my videos, anything you guys want to hear opinionated in terms of MMA. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you have, whether it is a direct message or if I add you to the show, I can give you a quick shout out also if you would like that. If you are a fan of just general sports, we'll only be having one more show on Tuesday. After that, it will be moving to Fridays. But I am on a weekly sports show called The Bolt on Squabos' YouTube channel. We talk NFL, we talk MLB, we talk NBA. So stay tuned for that. NFL season's fast approaching. We have preseason going on right now, so we will be talking a lot more NFL as of recent in the near future, but also we got baseball playoffs coming up here soon. Mariners have been hot. I'm from the Pacific Northwest, so we'll definitely be talking about them. So stay tuned for that. And as always, find me here on YouTube at Monday Night Fight Talk, Mondays at 5 p.m. next week. Thank you all for listening. Can't wait for next week.